Okay, apparently we're on. So we'll see how it works. So I'm sharing my screen and I'm looking at what I'm sharing. So I'm producing like an infinite tunnel. So no worries. We'll quickly replace that with something better. And so let me minimize that so it quit being annoying. And so I can do window and go fire up my quick presentation on what I'm going to be talking about. So yeah, the screen resolution's a little funny. So here you go, Windows. Seriously, that's how I'm going to do it. I would say it, but we're recording, so I don't want to broadcast the password to the whole world. So cool. There we go. That'd be cool if you can get on the actually if you can get on it too, because I'll be able to. Let's see how it looks. Oh, I zoomed in. Let me try. For some reason, I've been well because I've been playing with my zoom. It's been starting to stick lately. That looks good on the screen. Did you figure it out yet? Yeah. Because you can actually interact with what we build as we build it. So I actually changed the name to Quick Chat because 15-minute chat is definitely not something I can do in 15 minutes when I'm talking about it. And I also added another little feature to it, so it's like it would have to be 25-minute chat or something. So it's quick though. So I've left it at that. And so anyway, if you guys are ready to get started, ready to go. It's cool that you both have your laptops because we can actually play around with this if you like. You gonna do what? Shut it and listen. Oh yeah. Well, at this point you can listen, and then we'll get to the fun part. So there's a bit about me, but you guys know me, so I'm not gonna talk about me any. What is LiftNG? So what I tell people is built upon Lyft. LiftNG is the most powerful, most secure AngularJS backend available today, which is pretty bold, right? You don't just go around saying stuff like that. Well, I actually stole it from Lyft. It's the same description they use for ourselves. Lyft is the most powerful, most secure web framework available today. So, are you're familiar with Lyft at least from here? I know, just from a little bit here. Have you been familiar with it a little? So just a little overview. Lyft is a web framework, of course. Security-wise, it safeguards from 6 of the OWASP vulnerabilities, and I hope it's cool to pronounce it because I like to say it instead of spelling it out. Designer friendly. It's view first with HTML templates, so like you don't have like JavaScript servlet pages or Java servlet pages and crap like that. It's just straight up HTML. Their comment and Ajax support is just outstanding. It's one of the things that certainly attracted me to Lyft when I first got into it. And it's actually Scala's oldest web framework, which is kind of cool because a lot of people are coming into Scala and are like, hey, what web framework want to use? Oh, they go Play because that's the type safe sort of endorsed one. But Lyft goes way back, and I really like how it doesn't hide web development from you. Like I said, with the view first templates, it really just kind of lets you do web development. Now, Angular, on the other hand, I know you're, Brett, right, familiar with Angular from work. You don't seem to enjoy it much. Maybe this will make it fun. Have you used Angular any? But kind of familiar with it? Yeah, I use it every day. Or even say how cool it could be used. I hope. But you know how it extends HTML, right? Makes the things kind of declarative and it's very test first oriented. It's got good things, right? And got good enough things anyway. But one thing that's really cool though is it mixes really well with Lyft, and it's kind of what inspired some of this stuff that we built. And because with Lyft it don't have these templates, so you don't have to mangle up. Like if you have an Angular JS, HTML template, you can it is a Lyft template. There's nothing else to do. You don't have to escape anything or do anything weird. You just drop it in there because there's nothing special that has to be done at that point. And so that's. So it'd be like a full directed template kind of thing, or you just need. You don't have to have. Well, if you're using directives, it's fine. It doesn't matter. This is what it comes down to. Whatever you're using, you just put it in there because Lift isn't care. It just looks at it as HTML or XML almost. Yeah, so whatever you put in there, it's no big deal. So what I'm actually going to do here real quick is connect my iOS device shortly. So anyway, LiftNG, it's a Lift module. It's kind of like a Ruby gem or something like that. You know, if you're using Lift, you can grab modules, which are little pieces of functionality that hook in. And so LiftNG defines a Scala DSL. And there's three kind of primary feature sets that it has. The first is ability to build secure backend Angular services / factories. I like to call them services, but if you're familiar with Angular, it's really a factory. I don't completely grasp the difference between service and factory yet, and it's subtle, and it's almost pointless, I think. But factory, but I like to think of it as service, just because service makes more sense to me, like semantically as a word. The second thing you can do is emit and broadcast events from the server, like you would on Scope or Scope, you know, emit and broadcast. And you can also do some really neat declarative client-server model binding. Just like with Angular, you often will bind this JavaScript side object to a UI element. And so the user changes UI element, that changes the value, and vice versa. This is kind of two-way binding. You can do the same thing between client and server with LiftNG, which is a lot of fun. So we're going to build a chat application with it. And just some prerequisites if you guys are actually can follow along if you want. If you have Java 6 or greater and SBT and construct iterate, I assume that you probably don't have all three of those, but if you're to go back and want to do this, these are the three things you'll see me use. So let's go play with it. So let me shut down the presentation. Any questions or comments about that so far? Let me connect my iPad here. I meant to do this before we got started, but I can live code pretty good, but not from memory so much. I will forget something if I try that. And the problem is I've gone through this example enough times, I'm starting to get to where I'm memorizing it. And the problem there is that I'll start getting off the script a little bit. And if something goes wrong, oh crap, I don't even know where I'm supposed to be at right now. But so yeah, the main thing is I'm going to show you, I was talking about Giterate, that last tool. Have you seen that any working with Scala? So it's a little bit older. I think it's about 3 years ago when it was first kind of getting be popular in the Scala community. And what it allows you to do is create project templates. And so it'll actually go out to GitHub, find the project that you specify, and produce like a skeleton. What am I? Not struts, but scaffolding. Thank you, scaffolding project for you. And so that's what we will do. So Giterate. So it'll go to my GitHub account and find my LiftNG project, and it'll make a. Like I said, it'll ask you some questions to kind of fill in the template. So like the name of your project and so forth, kind of thing, and then it just plugs it into SBT and Scala code and all the right places. And so we're going to call it chat. We'll use my domain name. The package is fine. Scala version I'm not going to mess with, or SBT version. I will go to Lift 2.6. It's almost ready. It's RC1. It's very close to being ready. LiftNG version is fine. So another thing too, you can set this. All these versions it's showing are the latest because it automatically checks a little card catalog and make sure it's the latest. It's just Lift has not been released, so it doesn't regard it as the latest. And so once you have this, let me go to chat, and you got a full project ready to go. And I'll just start up the container. And while it downloads the internet and things like that, I'll go crank up IntelliJ too. So I know you're familiar with Maven and so forth, right? So it's got to do the whole download the internet thing. But fortunately, it should all be in the cache and won't take very long. So yeah, no, well, I would like to actually. I'm going to talk to him sometime and be like.
Clojure stuff.
He's doing a lot of Clojure stuff, yeah, but he's still very much involved in Lyft as well. Like, he didn't, like, for instance, he didn't leave the community. He didn't quit being a committer and so forth, but he doesn't contribute much anymore. So, because I have been kind of wondering, like, what is your resignation of dictator for life exactly? Because he's still, you know, like I said, still somewhat active in the community and so forth, still around. In fact, when they asked me to be a committer, he was the one who, you know, proposed that I was, or however the word you want to use it, or you know, kind of asked if the community thought that I could join, if they felt comfortable with it. And so yeah, he's still involved to an extent, but it's a lot more. I mean, I think there's always been a community around it. You know, you certainly understand that, but now it's much more so owned by the community, but still kind of the same ground rules and everything that were.
Are you the LiftNG person?
Yeah.
You're like, did you?
I didn't start it. I kind of discovered it. What had happened?
Yeah, no, it looked like it wasn't a clone.
Right. It's not a clone repo. Yeah, what had happened was a guy named Doug Roper did a presentation at NE Scala, I think, it was a meetup in New England, and he just said, hey, check out what you can do with Angular with Lyft, and he just built that first feature I mentioned, which is build secure backend services. And right about the time we were having some struggles with our Lyft application at work because we were trying to do too much client-side dynamic, you know, rich behavior, and doing it all with jQuery and that stuff. It was just turned into a mess quickly, if I'm sure you know. And Dave Lee actually said, hey, have you seen this video? Because I was asking around about people using Angular and things like that. And so anyway, I watched the video. I'm like, that is perfect, exactly what I'm looking for. And he said they were going to make it open source. I made sure that happened. And I took his code, which is a full Lyft project, and just pulled out the Angular part and made it to a module and just started working on it. Started adding features and maintaining it and stuff like that. Started using it at work.
So LiftNG is the start of it.
Yeah, like the initial idea is Doug Roper's, but from there I've just taken off with it and done whatever the heck I feel like. Because we use it at work, though. So that's what really makes it a lot of fun. It's like, hey, we could really use this. Well, let's just go build it in LiftNG, and it's open source. Whoever wants to use it can use it. And so yeah, that's kind of the brief history of it. I get a lot of credit for it, but I have to give a lot of credit to Doug Roper for the initial idea because it was brilliant. And the best idea in the whole thing is his. So everything else is, for me, is just kind of trying to make it better. Where am I? So here's what the project is. I want to zoom in, make sure everyone can see it okay. When you, I just have some Hello World junk set up. We're not going to play with it much, but it like loads the time, and then you can always just using an LiftNG service, go click check and get the time. You can also do a ticker, which will push events, and it's just like if you had no idea how to do LiftNG, you have a few working examples. But of course, we're not going to use that. First thing I'll look at is a little bit about Lyft. As I've been saying, this is just pure HTML templates. So let me zoom in so you can see. Get rid of this. And it's a good zoom. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So like for instance here, I just jump in and app is what you see at the top of the screen, right? So it's just pure HTML. I can put, you know, blah, whatever in there, refresh, and you'll get blah. And but what's of course very interesting is like, can I actually do something with code with this, not just HTML, not just DOM? And so the answer is of course. So kind of the Lyft way. So forget about LiftNG for a moment. Just a little bit about Lyft. Need some more zoom, or you good? Just go move. Yeah, I can zoom a little more. Yeah, yeah. Come on. It's a nice HD TV, but it's not humongous, unfortunately, for showing code. Yeah, for showing code. So anyway, all I'm going to do is just add a class to it. So this is where my title is. And what you do with Lyft, you kind of you just come in here and say data Lyft, because you know data dash anything in HTML5 is just ignored, well, by the browser and so forth. And you tell it, Lyft, go process this HTML chunk with some code, and I'll call it chat snippets or snips. Snips. And then you also get like a function name like title. And so what it'll do, using course reflection, it'll look in the snippet directory of your package rather, find this class, look for a function called title, and expect it to be like an XML transforming function. and then it'll pass it this whole DOM element to that function. And you can either replace it entirely or just pick apart, you know, like I just want to replace this little piece, you do whatever you want. So that's kind of how, in principle, in a nutshell, the way Lyft does DOM rendering is that you just give it functions that operate on stateless functions. Of course, if you do stateful stuff, then good luck. But, you know, if you do it on your own, there's some tools that help you do it as you need it.
That whole tree fragment is replaced by whatever the term.
Yeah, exactly. And there's all kinds of cool helper methods or helper functions, I should say, that that allow you to build that. The main thing is, and I know this would be difficult to read, but if you just put it in a snippet package, it'll find stuff. There's like two magic directories or packages in Lyft. One is snippets and one is comment, and we'll use both of those as we go through this. So what I'll do is make this class I just was pretending to use chat snips. I'll make it an object because it doesn't really need to have any kind of state associated with it. And like I said, I called it title. So as long as I have this function, I'm good to go. Just for instance, I'll just put this there for a moment, make it happy. I need to import some stuff. No, usual. And so it's pretty neat what you can do. So I called it title, right? Give it a class title. And so you can use actually CSS selector. So you can say, hey, go find the class title and grab all of its children, which in this case is just text. All right. So find its text and replace it with stuff like blah, blah, whatever. And let's see if it's let it build. Scala is notorious for being slow compiling. There you go. Blah, blah, whatever. And so for something more interesting, of course, I'll do Java net for address underscore. Yeah. What I'll do is put in the IP address that I'm using here. So let's say HTTP plus get localhost. Yeah. Host address. This is where the notes really help me. I have not memorized my Java API that well. Again, you know, I don't think you guys are familiar enough with Scala, but you know, you can use any Java libraries and standard stuff's available to you. And there is an unfortunate bug in one of the plugins that Lyft uses that doesn't reload the container correctly most of the time. So I've kind of gotten used to when I need to restart the container and when I don't. Okay, so I need to. So there you go. Whenever you want to try to hit this HTTP and just see if it's working as expected. It should be. I'm not on a VPN or anything, so I bet that right there will work. So you can actually kind of just follow along if you like. It work? Thinking about it. Okay. I was curious if we'd actually be able to do that on this network or not. Yeah, you did it, Eddie? Okay. Okay, maybe it's firewall or something's not quite right. You know, public and two, I think. I don't think they gave me any private privileges. Cool. Oh, cool. Yeah, yeah. I was hoping that would work. So you can kind of play with this stuff as we go along if you like. So good deal. I thought that would work. So what I'm going to do is just wipe out all this junk here that we don't particularly need for a chat application. I'm not going to worry about the home static content stuff on the left. You know, we could blow up as much as we want, but there's no time for that. Because this is supposed to be a 15-minute chat, right? So this is sort of the index page, and then of interest, you see there's stuff around it, but the bulk of it is right here, where it's div id main. So again, there's multiple ways you can tell Lyft to do its processing. My favorite is use data-Lyft. I probably actually want to go eventually update my template, this template project that comes out for free. Another way you can say is class. You can say class, hey Lyft, do stuff. This is like the older way to do it before HTML5 kind of said you can do data-whatever you like. And so I just say all that to say is that what's happening is this particular div is getting processed by Lyft, and the function is calling surround with default, which was the HTML that we were in. And so at content, there's like a content ID in here somewhere. Right there. Main content gets found here. So that's the way you can kind of do a wrapper. So like in this particular application, every page would just be this part that's highlighted in it up. And so you can have one snippet of HTML to define the whole outside of it and the menu and all that stuff, and then put chunks of it on the inside. So what I'm going to do is wipe it all out. Clear that out. F5 it. It should be empty. Very good. And I don't want to get confused by any of that stuff. So here's the stuff that Brett will be painfully familiar with. List chat. All right, make an app. I'll give us a title. So if you've done anything like around Lyft, we always use chat as our example because it's very simple and people can understand it. You can build it in roughly an hour. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. The round trip, you know, all that good stuff. So it's ubiquitous in the Lyft realm. So what am I going to build now? I need a controller. Oh, is he going into that? Very cool. Very nice. Yeah. Yeah, I figured that would be. I would assume that David's mindset would still be like, I want to do this. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. The end goal is still the same. So, and so I know you're a little less familiar with Angular, but the idea is here is I say, here's an application in Angular. We'll look it up by name, and then you can declare multiple controllers within that. We're just going to have one for application. And again, it's just nice because this is a Lyft template, view template, just HTML. I can put whatever Angular stuff I want and just whatever I want to do UL. So what I'm going to do is just, come on, help me out a little bit more than that. It's just build an unordered list for our chat application. So this will be like chat message, right? Chat message. Yeah, in HTML, just hard coded, right? I'll make a couple of them. Morgan, you can't type right because he found it. Whatever. Yeah. So this is here's your chat conversation, chat message, HTML1, right? It might say something more meaningful like hola. And we'll do just good old-fashioned input. Type is text. So that's where we can type in our messages, and we'll have a button. Oops. There's your chat application. Yeah, I'm just writing HTML. You know, nothing that's stunning there. So when you do things with Angular, though, you start telling, hey, Angular, here's my controller. Pay attention. Just like with Lyft, hey, do stuff here. Well, thing with inputs, like a text box, you can do the bind or like a model binding, like I was talking about earlier. So this right here will say, okay, well now there's a variable called chat input that is always in sync with the text box. So if it's empty, there's an empty string. If I put something in code, it shows up in the box and vice versa. And similarly, which you probably used to on-click and things like that, ng has its own ng click. So I can say on, send, you know, call this function when the user presses the button. So of course now I need some JavaScript to complement that stuff. So there's some hello world stuff I'll delete more hello world stuff. We are past hello world, we're building stuff. So Lyft chat.js. Zoom in a little bit so everybody can see. Don't care about comments. Who cares about comments ever? They're not good. And I'll tell you, I get on a soapbox about comments at work. So here you go. Here's how you define the JavaScript behavior that you want to assign to that app. It's called a module. A module is very generic. It's almost like package if you're used to kind of Java and Scala lingo. And so it's kind of like, hey, I'm going to make a thing called Lyft chat, and I have 0 dependencies. So that's what the second argument is. My dependencies are none. It's empty. And now I'm going to build a controller to complement the one I created in the DOM. So main thing is these names just got to match. As long as these names match, you're fine. You know, if I got a chat controller here, I got a chat controller there, it knows what it means, or you know, it binds it all together. And I'm going to use a lot of new lines to make sure this is, well, It's pretty wide. We'll see. So we'll try to keep it good form. So a very important idea is this notion of scope. Familiar with scope in Angular? It's kind of like, so the idea is that this controller is defined for this div and everything that contained in it. It has there's a notion that there's a scope contained in it. So these variables like chat input and this function like onSend are defined on this scope object. And the way Angular is set up, you say, okay, I'm building this, and here comes the function that defines that. So run this function when you instantiate the controller. And what you do is give it the things you want. I want my scope, so send that to me. But you do it as a string. If you've done like minification of JavaScript, you know, it wipes everything out. So you got to put it as a string. So when you minify, this will become A, and then it wouldn't know what the heck I wanted. So you know, a good form is to always specify them explicitly. Really? Yeah. Is it because it's got the map file? Is it using?
I didn't set it up. I didn't actually did it without them. It's like,
oh.
I noticed all these things disappearing. I'm like, hey, we can't do this right away. We can't.
Very cool. I didn't know that was possible. So maybe this is kind of unnecessary now because it's redundant, right? I have to put the string and this name could be anything because I added a string. I call it S if I wanted to. But yeah. And $ is kind of a convention in Angular. Like if this has got a $, it means it's an Angular thingy. It's not something you wrote yourself. And so anyway, this function gets called whenever Angular, you know, initializes everything and creates that scope for me. So just to kind of demonstrate the way that kind of works is onSend. Let's do it onSend. That makes sense. I'll define that function. So again, I attach it to scope object so that Angular kind of has dominion, understands what I'm doing. And I hate semicolons. Do you?
That last little thing.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, this one will, it'll color it when it's needed, but I don't trust JavaScript to only need it at certain times, so I'll always specify it just to be extra safe. So let's just alert it, right? Make sure it loads in. I've been working on my Spanish lately, so it didn't load. Oh, I got to add it to the DOM. Created JavaScript, I didn't put it in my DOM, so it doesn't really work. Type is application JavaScript. Source.js, lift chat.js, very good. That time works. That's kind of how you tie stuff together in Angular anyway, or parts of it. And so what's more interesting though, what we really want to do is something related to actually, such as blanking out the chat input, right? Make it look like it actually sent. So I should spell it F5, and if I say bye, it goes away. Next thing, of course, is actually hook it up to the server and make it do something interesting there. So what I'll do is kind of work in reverse like before. I'm going to show what I need, and we'll go actually build it. So what I want to be able to say is, hey, give me my chat services. I want chat services. I have a dependency. I want to import his functionality. And so then I can say, we'll call it chat service for lack of a better name. And again, I can call it whatever. So I can abbreviate here. It doesn't matter. As long as the names and the strings agree with what I build later. And so we would probably want to have something like, we can call this whatever you want, but send chat, whatever function you like. And pass it that scope, chat input. And so that's what we kind of want to happen. We've just got to build it because right now, actually, if I go F5 this, you'll see that I get some errors. It's going to say, hey, what the heck are you talking about? Console module chat service is not available. Well, of course not. I hadn't built it. So you get kind of used to seeing that when you're first bootstrapping a project with Angular, in particular LiftNG, because you're building stuff that doesn't exist yet. Trying to tie it all together. So what we're going to do, just like with that chat snips I had earlier where I had my title. So this was a function of some HTML to some different HTML. You can just as well say, I don't care what's there. This is what you are, by God. And what else is HTML is a script tag, right? You say script tag and put in some JavaScript. Well, that's basically what we're going to do for what Liffy gives us. So I'm going to make it call this chat services. This name is arbitrary, but again, it just has to match, right? Whatever you end up using. So let me minimize this so we can see really well. And again, the important part is it's in snippets, so Lyft will find it. Let me import the Lyft NG stuff. Lyft modules, NG, Angular. If you don't specify a function, you can get away without specifying a function if you call it render. That's kind of like the default with Lyft. So when I go put it in my DOM, and I'll go ahead and do that, I'm talking about it. So the cool thing is like, no, I don't care about type. I want to say data Lyft. You give me my script. And so I'm going to call it chat services. Again, the important part here is that this chat services exactly matches the object name here. And because I didn't specify function services dot nothing, I didn't put anything, it calls render. So if you don't want to make it verbose, you just say, oh, well, my God, just call render. And so we're going to start calling some Angular or Lyft NG stuff. That's a really long name. I hope, I'm trying to understand if there's a use case to not call this. It seems like you always call this. This is part of the original stuff I got from Doug Roper. So maybe one day I'll meet him and be like, do I really, really need this? Can I just call it R or something simpler? But so anyway, you got to wrap it up. So what I want to say is, yeah, Angular module. Just like before, this is the DSL part, right? Just like before, I declare a module in my JavaScript code. I do the same thing here. I want a module. This kind of that's called chat services. And then you just continue on with whatever extra pieces you need, like so well, let me do it on a factory. And I'd rather it be called services, but Angular, technically this is a factory. And what I built was, let's see, I want this factory chat service. Where am I at? So let's go build that. So you can't just return an object the same way you can in JavaScript. You kind of have to have a hook to wire this stuff together. So this is my JSON object factory. And it's the object that's going to be returned as a result of the call to the factory. And here is where you can start attacking on all the stuff you want to do. If you want to do something that's evaluated and returns a future, you call one of these functions. If you want to just return a chunk of JSON at page load time, you do this. If you want to do it dynamically, you got these options. I hope that in a few months, when I get ready to call this release version 1, I want to go through these names and rethink them through, make sure they're as clear as possible, because I don't know that people coming in with no JSON call means it comes to the server every time, right? You know, some of these names I don't think are as clear as they could be. But this is going to be my send chat, which is what we declared here, or we pretended existed. So send chat, and I'll take a string. And I'm not going to return anything, because it's just going to send it to the server and like, whatever, thanks, go away. You know, there's nothing to say in return. And just for fun, we'll print this out. Let's just show that things are hooked up correctly. So I created it. I've added it to the DOM. I've imported it here. Let's see if I can just refresh. Nope, not found. Chat services. So I need to restart the container. I swear it used to not have this problem. So it's just eventually I'll get so annoyed by doing these live demos, I'm going to actually go in and fix the bug. That hadn't happened yet. So to the server. There it is, to the server. All right. There. And so that's how easy it is. Now, I don't know if it's simple, but it's easy to make a Guten Tag. There we go, German. So yeah, he's playing with it too. So perfect. So that's how you declare things as a service on the server. So I just got to know, since you do Angular a bit, is that pretty cool?
Yeah, so I guess so there's Scala. There's Angular and Scala.
Yeah. Right. It's just basically replicated. It's just that now this chunk that's my factory runs on the server rather than running on my client. And let me show you a little bit, because we talk about, oh, it's so secure and all this stuff. Right now I'm not using HTTPS, so the whole thing doesn't matter. But just to give you a flavor of what that's all about, oh look, there's script. No, where is it? Is it up here? Last time I went through this, I forgot where it was at too. Or is it at the bottom? I can't remember if I put it at the bottom or at the top. That's the problem. Oh, that's the sidebar. Oh, that's the bottom. No, that's style. Oh, it's in the head. Duh. I don't like putting my scripts in the head really, but this project does that by default. There it is. So yeah, it's very much what you may expect to see. It is making Angular code, right? So Angular module chat services is right there. It depends on LiftNG. So there's some JavaScript that we've written as part of the plugin, or sorry, as a module. There's a factory. It's called chat service. Returns this this function that takes some stuff you don't know about because it's part of the plugin or the module, and returns this object that ultimately takes a string right here and does all this nasty stuff. My favorite part is that ugly name right there. That's kind of where the security starts coming in. So every time you render a page, I bet if you look at yours, you should see a separate random number if you can dig in there and find. Just look in the head and shoot out the last script tag. For each rendering of this, it's producing these random numbers. So you have an unpredictable RESTful endpoint essentially, because you have to have this session token that's in my browser and know that random number in order to send a command to that service, right? It's a different, some other junk. And so this is part of what Doug Roper originally wrote, which I thought was just brilliant to do that sort of thing. So you can, because usually with an Angular application, you just kind of write this open RESTful endpoint. Like, here it is. Oh, we got to secure this stupid thing, and you got to worry about all that stuff. Well, you're done. You just, as long as you use HTTPS, which is easy to do with Lyft. I'm just not going to use it when I do a local demonstration like this. You're done. You don't have to worry about that yet. So to me, that's really exciting because it let me just run away with this thing at work and not have to worry about people being upset about security. And so anyway, that's the first kind of like fundamental feature of LiftNG, is being able to create these services that push down to the server. But what's more fun is going back up, right? And so the first thing I'll show is, let's do this. Brett joined the chat. Yay, Brett. So what we'll do, let's put at the bottom, whenever someone joins the chat, we'll push a message saying, hey, someone joined. Now, really what I'm going to use is IP address because we're not going to go in there and make a login form or anything. But that's the kind of the idea. So really, I just want a div that shows up at the bottom. And to make Angular do it, you say repeat this for every user that pops in case you had two at the same time, right? So ng repeat for, what is it? What do I call it? User, ng users. Yeah, that makes sense. And then do the handlebar thing, right? You've seen that before in other templating stuff when you put the double. So that makes, so Angular will go, oh, you're talking about user, which I defined here, and new users is going to be on the scope. So again, to kind of show that, actually, if I refresh now, it'll go to empty because there is no new users. So let's say scope new users equals, right. That's what we want to accomplish. But of course, we don't want it to come from here. What you want is to come from the server. I'm going to blank it out. And to kind of give you a feel for the way this stuff works, I'm sure you guys have used this right on for listening to events. So when I get a new user, this string could be anything. It doesn't have to match the variable name. It just makes sense for it to match in this case. So whenever there's an event there, you'll get a function call. And your arguments will be the event itself and then the data. And make sure I'm not getting too far ahead of myself. Yep. Again, I've gone through it enough that start this right now. So what you want to do is push this onto the array. Obviously, you would probably call data user or something. I'm just trying to emphasize the way that the callbacks work. I'm back in JavaScript. Yeah. I'll put it at the top. Maybe it'll kind of forget where we're at. Yeah. Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure. Yeah, it's no problem. No hay problema. So, so what I'm going to do is grab the timeout service, which is, you can say, hey, after so many seconds, milliseconds, call this. Angular provides one, so you can mock it out for testing very easily. So that's why I'm using the Angular provided one. But I just want to show you kind of the way this works. Normally, you would say scope, no, timeout, call this function. And then we'll just say in here, I'll tell you what we'll do. Scope emit equals $. To user, and we'll just say it's me this time. And then I want that to happen after like 2 seconds. So it should go away. Then like after 2 seconds, boom, Joe joined the chat. That's kind of what we want it to look like, right? And this is how the sort of the code looks like, particularly this in Angular. You say emit this event. Pretty straightforward. This is the title of the event, like the channel, the topic, however you want to think about it. And here's the data, which is just going to be a string in this case. And then this is how you listen to. You say on that event, run this function with the data that comes along, and do whatever stuff we got to do. So first we got to go to the boot. Now this is Scala. In the initialization of the application, I want to say, hey, whenever there's a new session, do something. When there's a new session, get the IP and send it to the client, right? That's what I want to do. So that's why I'm kind of over here. And so this is kind of a little bit into the details of Lyft, but we got to have something interesting that we can push up to the client. So here's a fun little operator. Append to the collection and reassign it. This is a var. So this is where we get to cheat a little bit, because in Scala we get variables. What it takes, the signature, you need a Lyft session. I don't care about the Lyft session, so I'm going to underscore the name, and I want the request. So what happens is every time after a session is created, it's like, here's the session and the request that initiated it. So you can look, did that come from IE? I'll make that guy go away, or whatever it is you need to do. For us, whoops, I did not capitalize my R. What we want to do though is grab that request and get the IP address. So like we just look at, like, we'll say servicing plus rec remote address. This time I certainly have to shut down because that's an initialization parameter. So I'm going to kill off my browser. So make sure it recognizes this clean, brand new session. And then new localhost. Excuse me. And servicing, yeah, it's like you guys are reconnected or something. So me, because I'm using localhost, and then there's a couple more servicing. So that's just, don't mind the details. That's just a place we can hook in and grab the IP address. And but what we really want to do with that is kind of kick it back over to the application side of things. So let's make a model class for our user. The default sort of empty skeleton Lyft projects you get always give you a model directory. You don't have to use it. There's no magic like snippet and comment. It's just there like, hey, you probably want models. Here you go. So it's just kind of convention. You don't actually have to do it. But so just real quick, I'll make a case class for user. Actually, I don't want to do it this way. I was going to show another kind of cool feature of Scala, especially if you're coming from Java. You can create a package object. Have you seen this before? Yeah, it's pretty interesting. So what you can do is like the notion difference between a package and an object are blurred in Scala to the point there's really no difference. Arguably, there may be some kind of runtime difference I'm not aware of, but so I can say, well, here's the entire package, and I'm going to put one file, start doing classes. So I don't have to have these, especially with Java, right? I want a model, I have to have this individual Java file for every single one. But here I can say, I'm going to put all my models in one file and make it convenient. So here's my user. Yes, IP. Right, straightforward. And so what I'm going to do with that though is either you're familiar with actor model concurrency. So you probably are, both of you are. Lyft uses that a lot for its pushing to the server, or from the server to the client rather. So what I'll do is go to comment. That's kind of your secret hiding place for all of your asynchronous stuff. Particularly if it's going to do comment, which is pushing to the server. I keep saying pushing to the server, pushing to the client from the server. So let me go. I'll call it chat actors. We'll put all of our actors in here. So let's make make an object. Let's make our chat server. And let me get some imports that I need. Oh yeah, here's another fun trick. Here's in a double package declaration. So what this basically does is say, I'm in this package, so everything in Joski chat I can see, but really I'm in this package. And so it's equivalent to saying the full package name and then importing the previous one. So it kind of lets you be in both at the same time, but all of your artifacts are in the final package name scope, namespace. So what it allows you to do then is import model. See, it sees user and all that stuff. So I don't have to put out the full name. And it's just, Scala put a lot of thought into those package names. It's kind of convenient. No, it comes from above chat. So model is here. I don't know if you can see very well, but model is a sibling of comment and chat. You said chat. I'm sorry. You said the right thing. Sorry. I misunderstood you. I thought I heard comment, but you said chat. So that's why you can import like that. Now we're going to import some of this stuff. So I need actor. And also need HTTP. So this is a lift actor. Right, so that automatically lets it have all kinds of good stuff. And here, let me close this. We got maximum code. With listener manager, I'll talk about that in a moment. So create, update. So when you have a listener manager, it's just because it's such a common pattern with actors, right? Is that, well, I have this actor and this other actor listens to me. And so you can say, well, just give me that stuff. Give me the listener manager. You handle all that. It's almost like if you're, doing events or something, you just say, well, I don't want to actually loop through and update everybody that's listening. You do that for me. I'll just tell you when I want an update. And that's what create update is. That's just saying, hey, anytime someone is created and listens to me, send them this. And anytime I tell you it's time to update, send them this. And I'm just going to put an empty string there down, just a placeholder. It's not what I wanted to do. This is a placeholder. We'll fix it up in a little bit. Pretty good with that so far. No big deal. So if you're familiar with Akka, use Akka. It's a receive. It's the function that's called with. One thing about the actors in Lift is they're older than the ones that are in Scala standard library, and they're older than the ones in Akka because Lift has been around forever. So the API is a little different. So it calls low priority. What Lift actually gives in their actors is 3 queues. You got low priority, medium, and high. Don't mess with the other 2, especially if you're doing comment, because all the comment messages have been handled there. But low priority is like where you put your business logic. I've literally never done anything but low priority. It's because that's second class, I guess. All that to say, when I get my user, I'm gonna do something with it, right? I don't know if you like being convinced. You can print line it again or whatever, but just to give it some kind of body. And so I actually want to go back to my boot. I don't want to print line. I want to say chat server. Of course, you're familiar with it because it's Erlang. We stole it from Erlang. So is it fair to say Erlang is the first implementation of the actor currency model? Or is there earlier implementations? I know Erlang popularized it at least. I don't think so. I've always wondered that because, well, maybe the 3 people that are actually listening to this recording will. Right. Well, yeah, absolutely. But Erlang being the first language in. Yeah. Really? Yeah, there we go.
I was trying to think.
Right.
This is interesting. The inspired by physics, including general relativity and quantum mechanics.
Very nice. Screw you. There's your language.
Well, I mean, there's a plug for
my gosh.
disciplinary studies.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. that would definitely behoove one to not just do software. But anyway, I digress a little bit about bringing that up. Main thing we want to do is like, hey, anybody that's listening to us, here's a user whenever this message comes in. And so let's go. It's just kind of, so the whole idea behind my chat server object just gives you a central place where everyone can send messages in and can send them back out to all the clients. And so that's the idea. So anybody that's listening to the server will hear, hey, there's a user. And then, of course, we're going to write the code that flings it back up. Everything we've done up to this point has just really been lift, right? Getting the IP, sending it to an actor. That's just some lift stuff. Now, for Angular in particular, we are lifting G. I'll build, I'm calling notifier, new user notifier. That's one of his job is to take that new user message, send it up to the clients that are interested. So it is an Angular actor with comment listener. So all of the Angular actors are comment actors. And again, that's Lyft used the actor model for doing this asynchronous pushes to the server. And again, the site listener manager is such a common pattern. Comment listener is super common because you want your actors, like any good software, right? Everything has one responsibility. So with your comment actors, they're always just to push up to the client, whatever setup they need to do for the viewing or the rendering or whatever, and just push stuff. And by stuff, it generally pushes either, well, generally you can either push a JavaScript snippet up, you can push some DOM up and place it with JavaScript and things like that. So what this one, of course, will do is push events up. And but I say all that to say that commonly with a comment actor, he's not going to generate the events. When he gets the event, his job is just to get it ready for the client. So comment listener being a common pattern. All you gotta do is say register with chat server. And it's all my cloud kind of hooked up to receive the users from this guy because I'm listening to him. He's going to send me those messages. And so we need our override flow priority. And so let me get a user, case user IP. I only want the IP out of it, so I'll extract it out. But this is where it's fun. So bring it all back around. This line right here. Let's see, get rid of that. Get rid of that because dollar signs are kind of ugly in Scala and Java. They kind of have a special use. Maybe for in the future, I should do double quotes. An easier transition. Again, just to emphasize sort of the DSL nature of this, is like you just do a scope event on the server now. And of course, instead of Joe, we're going to send the IP. All right. And then to me, that's just a lot of fun, having, writing the libraries to do this sort of thing. And I can actually claim this one. I wrote this myself. Right? This is not this. Yeah. Yeah, that was just a timeout, just something contrived to have an excuse to call him it. So it's just saying that it's meant to be, again, just like you saw when I declared a module in a factory, it's to mirror the Angular API. Do we what?
JavaScript.
Yeah, I'm going to get rid of that. That was just for. Yeah, because that's going to be when I get this event, I'm going to do something. In particular, I'm going to stick it on to the model here. So this part's certainly necessary. Oh?
Yeah, I get it. I was thinking you were going to end up with that all run on the server and just sort of push it.
Oh, I see. Yeah. You're actually kind of a step ahead to the third feature. We'll talk about that. Yeah, so this is just, can I push events? Just good old-fashioned events if that's what makes sense for your application. Where did I put I got my user. So the thing is, now I've got this actor. The common actor needs to exist somewhere in the page. That's just kind of a way Lyft works, is that somewhere you've got to do it like David Lyft. Say, I want comment, stick it right here. And the type is, what do I call it? User notifier. Now, this turned out to be excellent for Angular because what I realized, regardless of LiftNG and Angular, this is how you put your comments into a Lift template. You just make a div or something, and again, Lift will take that div, look at the comment function here, and say, oh, okay, well, here's the div, and it just gives you HTML and JavaScript to replace it with. So it just puts in the hooks to do asynchronous pushes from the server. And but the brilliant part of it, like as far as it just so happened to merge so well with Angular, is that if I put it here, it's inside a scope. Because it has to exist in the DOM somewhere, I can put it inside a controller. It has a scope. So that scope here corresponds to wherever the heck I put it in the DOM, which in this particular case is this chat controller. So by putting it there, let's see if I can refresh. Yeah, I have to restart. Okay, we're at an hour. You guys need me to cut it off, or actually it's really close to being done. Well over halfway. Deal, good deal. So yeah, you refreshed or something. Let's see if I got it working. I don't know if I've got it. Did I remember to hook everything up? Let's see, added it to the DOM. Let me do this. Yeah, okay, it's working. I don't know. Sometimes I've noticed when I'm doing this demo, if you just do a refresh, I think because the cookie's still there, I don't know that because it's in development mode, I think it just kind of sort of, yeah, whatever, keep going. It's not trying to be secure or anything like that. But I bet if you killed your window and cranked up a new one, it might actually see where you've joined the chat. Yeah, perfect. So there you go. Now, one thing that's kind of ugly about this is that it's hanging out there. You kind of want it to go away. So just to pretty stuff up. This is where a more legit use of that timer would go, right? You would say, timeout, after so long, call this function. Let's say after, let display for 5 seconds and then go away. And scope. But yeah, we're manipulating our data structures. It's not particularly functional, but the rest of the stuff we're doing feels pretty functional. And so that's just JavaScript change, so that should be fine. So now go into chat, and then like after 5 seconds or something, it should go away. There it goes. That looks kind of nice. Enough. And it goes away. Very nice. So now let's actually finish building the chat application. That's major feature number 2. There's several things you can do with scope. It can be root scope if you want. You can do broadcast and emit. That just depends on what direction of the chain it goes up, because scope certainly can embed, right? So if you emit, it goes to all your, I think it goes to maybe your siblings, or maybe not. I think it only goes to yourself and your children. If you do broadcast, it goes to yourself and parents. So usually use emit, but there's a few other things you can use along these lines. Now what we really want to do is make this stuff work. That's when it's going to be fun. So let's go to our DOM. Again, let's actually do the ng repeat stuff. Repeat. So we will call it, what do I call it? Message and chat.messages. The one thing here is that, there we go, message. With Angular, it's kind of weird. Like ng repeat, if you have the same element in there twice, it explodes and dies on you. But fortunately, they said, well, just tack this on, say track by index, and it makes it happen. This means the uniqueness of the element is not the data, but the index. And so that's just something you need to do if you want to build a chat application or something where there's possibility of duplicates. Really, you really want to be careful. The user and users, you also want to say track by index, right? In case you decide with 2 browsers to get on there really fast, it'll kill it and it won't work. So that's just a little minor detail of Angular in particular you got to kind of handle. So again, idea is that now in scope, if I have a chat, I can put messages on there. So syntax right. It'll be 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, let's ng. That has a nice ring to it. 5, 1, 2, 3, let's ng. Now you notice there's that little glitch there for a moment. Let's show the Angular. You put ng cloak and it cleans that up. I don't know if you guys are using that. Yeah, if you refresh again, the likelihood is Yeah, generally kind of first time. So good practice using G-Cloak, but I'm not talking about good practices. I'm just talking about awesome today. So that's the idea. We're going to have an object called that will be on the scope with the name chat, but it has a field called messages, which is an array of strings. So if we will do that, let me make a new case class. Got messages or whatever. This part of the name doesn't matter, but this does. This needs to match that embedded name in there. And one thing that's, default constructor value. If you want to use some of the more magical things in LiftNG, you need your models to extend NG model. It's kind of a, if you're familiar with Java serializable, it's kind of like a type tag. It doesn't add any code or anything, but reflectively you'll see it like, oh, these serializable, it's okay. Same thing with, there's some reflection stuff you got to do to transfer objects from Java, from JSON back to Scala classes. That having that type tag on there makes possible. I want to spend a lot more time on eventually, especially before release number 1, to say, can I get rid of that? Because I don't like that. It doesn't hurt. It's okay, but I don't like it. You know, like, let my models be pure. But I hadn't figured that out yet. And because it's a small price to pay, I've been able to live with it up to this point. So we're going to need another actor. Now this is one that I literally finished this up over the weekend. I had some prototypes that I've kind of put out there and let people play with it, but revamped it this weekend. So now we're going to build a simple NG model binder. So this is what I was talking about, where you can have a value on the server in that state, and it's going to say bound to the value on the client. And you don't have to do your events like on and things like that, like you were thinking a minute ago. So here's the fun part. So, no, back here. The DOM, I have something called chat with a field called messages. Chat, so this is my chat. And the model is going to be associated with it has a field called messages. So that's how it'll kind of bind to the naming. So let's say chat messages list, just from Scala. And this sort of hello world, we're making progress. Now you notice it's not happy. It's got a red underline. The problem is with binding, you can do it 2-way or 1-way, right? You can bind from server to client, client to server, or both. Just conceptually, right? And so I purposefully built it so that you could choose. You don't want to incur the wrath of the overhead of having, from the client to the server if you're only pushing to the client, like we are in this case. So what I'm going to say is do a mix in, like a trait, you mix in a trait. And so what I say is with binding to client, and it's happy. Until you actually tell it that you want to construct it you have to tell what direction you want to bind with. And once you have binding to client, it's generally pretty happy.
A curiosity question that's kind of there. I have never done an extend on a class and then given parameters to the class. Can I see the definition of simple?
Yes. This is horrible. I didn't look it up. Well, let me try again. For some reason, it doesn't have the source. So let me jump up to here. Simple. I got type parameter, and then bind to is the string, initial value. This is the one I said. So you just use parentheses. Kind of like the case class. I mean, it's the same.
Yeah.
It's just.
But what gives you that ability is that it's abstract? Is that the point?
No. Any class you can throw this constructor on here with parentheses.
Right.
Yeah. Like the case classes I built here. The same idea. It's just that what's throwing you off is I didn't also have a body. You see?
I haven't known what the problem is. I haven't done that recently. I remember now. Gotcha.
Yeah. And plus the other thing that's kind of weird about it is I've got to have arguments to this constructor, and then I turn around and throw another type on it after it.
Right.
So it makes it look kind of odd that my width is over here. Yeah. Okay, so that's the idea. And another thing too that may be of interest to you is that this is what makes that compilation fail. Is that I say, hey, like to construct me. So this is the first line. So this is the first line of the body. Here's where the body begins. To construct me, you must provide the bind direction. That's my self, what they call self type. And so that sort of arrow there is sort of the key syntax that makes that possible. Where you can say, in order to have me, you have to give me an implementation of this. It's really fun. It probably was not, well, actually, there are reasons I needed it in this particular case. I wouldn't just be like, ooh, look, Scala, I had a real reason. So again, I need to put it in the DOM, put my binder in the DOM. Again, you can put it anywhere in the scope. One thing I like to do is actually put it on the chat or the controller itself. And so, because I'm running out of space. Angular bind type chat binder. That's good. So here I'm actually asking the liftng. Eventually, I'll probably change this to liftng again for release number 1 once it gets good enough. I feel it's going to call it done for the first time. And then you tell it the type again, just like it would, and basically ripping off comment. Same idea. Just go grab this guy. And so once I've done that, it'll, whoops, that's not the code I want to see. But can I just close this? It's messing me up. Got it in my DOM now, but I've still got to do something, interesting with it. Because right now we have a binder, but we have no data. Well, that's not true. The default value is there from Scala, right? That's already bound. Now, one thing I do want to show before we get too far about this. So, I closed the browser earlier. If we look here, this is where the binder is. Let me make sure it's right. Yeah, this is where the binder is dropped off. What I really like about this approach is that is not the JavaScript you want to see. Am I looking in the wrong place? Script. Right. Is it this div? No. Or is it down here? I don't know my code that well, apparently. Very good. What I wanted to show you is this right here. One thing that's kind of unfortunate about building an Angular application is that it's typically what the flow is. You deliver the application to the browser, the skeleton, and then it says, hey, it turns around and calls home. I want my data. Give me my data. And then it's, oh, yeah, you need your data. And it pushes the data back up. You don't get both. Well, with these binding actors, you get it. It sends the data as JavaScript. A little weird, but it sends it in. So the DOM itself contains from Scala the messages right there. And so you don't have this double round trip of delivering the Angular code, the Angular waking up and going, where's my data? Come here, server, send it to me. So you have to send it in one go. So that's another thing I really like about the binding actor that kind of got me excited about building it. It's or I keep calling it binding actor. That's the old name. It's the model binder. Follow me on that? Look good? It's got some other ceremony around it to make sure stuff happens correctly, but never mind that JavaScript. There's a lot of ugly stuff I had to do to make that work. Yeah. Yeah, so this is like the initial value. Is it made sense to have an initial value of some sort.
So whatever the values are, it will be
Yeah. So if this actor gets updated over time, each time the new page is rendered, it'll have the values. Yeah. Matter of fact, remind me to show you again, and I think we should see that the chat conversation is this array that gets delivered when you load the page after a chat conversation is going on. I think that's what we will see. I'll double check. We'll try it again. Okay, so where am I at? Okay, so chat server actually needs to handle messages now. That's where we're at. Normally you would have a database or something legit. I'm going to use a variable because it's easy. It's not simple, but it's very easy. I'm not going to create update messages. Let's make it private just for good measure. So messages, it's on the empty list of strings. So initially that's what I have. So now my placeholder is actually going to make sense. Anytime someone subscribes to me, just wrap it in my case class, and here's the strings. Or anytime I need to, hey, everybody update, here they are. And the other thing is I need to actually handle the message when I receive it. So now whenever I get a message of type string, I'm going to do stuff. I'm going to say messages, and I'm going to reassign a variable, messages plus the message. Now, another thing too is this would like run out of memory eventually. If I had enough people chatting, this would eventually run out. So take the right 10. So, you know, if you visualize your array, it takes the most recent 10 messages, so it starts shoving off the old ones. And then we update our listeners. Update listeners. Again, it says, hey, my model has changed. And say, okay, well, everybody, I'll call this function. I'll get this and send it to everybody on your behalf because I'm a listener manager. And because comment listener is now listening, excuse me, I didn't want to talk about comment listener, because Finder is listening, he'll get that message. And because the model, because that's the message I'm sending is chat messages, which is the model, which I've declared here, kind of indirectly, it'll start sending out. I'm just going to get rid of this now. Every time my binder receives a new message of the type of the model, it says, oh, I guess this needs to go to the client. You know, this is my new state. It'll send it along. And so the only other thing I think I need to do at this point is actually send. Oh wait, he needs to be a listener. Hold on, let me comment. I added the other, but forgot. Yeah. So which one?
Wherever you were in the
yeah, this guy.
So my style is like that. So what's the difference between that chat messages and the other one? Are you constructing it somewhere?
So
Or are you,
this does construct. When it's a case class, you don't have to say new.
yeah, I figured, yeah.
Right with that. Yeah, so this constructs a new one here. And that's what I had in my originally here. It was chat messages with a list in it.
Yeah. So what is that? What is that piece there?
This one is my initial value.
Okay, so it is another one that's just.
Yeah, exactly. And here, yes, I just don't put anything in my default constructor. So, well, it's not going to go to it because it's not happy. Is an empty list. So if I don't specify it at all, it just gives me an empty one. Sound good?
Yeah.
All right, so I need to be a comment list in or lister. He lists the comments. And that really gets funny because I'm going to put a body and there's this with kind of jammed up in the middle.
Well, now, so why, I'm trying to figure out why that works. After you provide arguments to.
You're right.
Okay, gotcha.
Now it's happy. I would have been stumbling over that for a little bit until I figured out. Yeah. I got off a line there. Yeah, this is what it should be. All right, so he's registered as a listener, and now the only other thing that has to happen is no one sending him chat messages. Because remember, all we did was print it. So now we just got to say chat server for chat server message. I can just send message, right? I didn't actually say anything about that earlier. So unless I've screwed up, we have a chat now. So Control F5. Boom. Yeah. Arbitrary Scala object. Yeah. Do whatever you want. Here's the real scary part. That just freaking works. You know what I mean? Like, that should always scare. Now, granted, this is 10. It works with 9. I used to have 9 on this work machine, but like literally this week or last week, said we don't have to support 9 anymore, and I threw a party and you know, threw away my IE9 and all that stuff. So yeah, it works on the IE9 and stuff. Because again, back to the comment, is that it degrades to the the lowest common or lowest possible implementation. So if it goes on an old browser, it just has long polling. But to you, it still looks like WebSocket. So you don't have to worry about it. So let me do this. Let's refresh. And I still got this open here. Chat controller, it was the bottom one. So what I think we'll see is, no, it's empty. Okay. Okay, that's fine. So what is happening in this particular case? Let me try something to change that. So I'm about to boot us here in a second. If I do session scope, what is happening is that for each page load, it's putting this actor there, this comment. So I think the page is loading before he gets that update message with the state. But if I make him session scope, I think it'll change that.
I just checked it here. Yeah,
make sure it will go to 10. Yeah. Very good. So let's try this change here. I want to see, because in this particular example, that server singleton object has kind of got the state instead of my binder. The binder doesn't have a state. Really, he's just a conduit. But by adding session scope, it makes him persist throughout the session. And so I want to see if that will cause a delivery of messages as advertised. So my browser, did I kill it? I didn't kill it. I just can't find it. So messages. I should really add something for the 2 messages. I'm lying because there's only 2. So now if I refresh the page, I think we'll find it in the DOM. Yes. So again, it's delivered. The state, if applicable, is delivered with the page. Again, the reason it didn't make sense, my little digression on why it wouldn't. So if you add session scope, this thing becomes, it's just with this application, it didn't make sense that each page or each user doesn't need state of the chat. State of the chat is completely contained in the singleton chat server. But you can do some freaky cool stuff with this though, because with the binder. So like one thing I want to use it at work. There's a bit that we may have to rewrite soon, in which case I'll whip out this because, like I said, we just got it right over the weekend. Is that what it'll allow you to do then is if the user has multiple tabs open and types something here, it shows up over there. Because it's two-way bound, right? The model's bound from this client to the server, and then my other client in the same session is bound, so the writing actually goes through the server and over to the other browsers. Yeah, but I mean, like, as you type, even. Yeah. Because now, yeah, right. Now I did put in a configurable timeout delay, so like you may want to say, well, buffer up changes for a second.
So that's what I'm curious about that. The binding from client to server, is that? I do know that question. Wrong statement. Are you? I'll ask you, how does it deal with the fact that multiple clients will be typing and messing around with data?
Chaos. What will happen though is because it's an actor.
I mean, are there facilities to, if you care about that?
We're just like, that's your problem. But you're not going to get inconsistent data because it's going through an actor. So an actor is fundamentally single-threaded. So it's just going to be the random order that the events come in. And so what'll happen is just clobbering back and forth.
So there's no like basically a choice, like another choice within a choice. Like, so, well, I want to have my clients back. Since there are many clients, it's one of going server to client, right? It's like each client is its own process space.
Yeah.
Right. So fanning out that way, there's not much of an issue. Coming the other way, I've got my one. So a way to go. I would like have a representation of each client.
Oh, I see. So you can sort it out.
I might actually want to do something. Please go see this, see that. I'll manage it, but I need to have that.
Yeah, that could be a cool feature. That's what you're saying.
Way to say I would like.
It could be done, but it's not done. I can say that because I think that Well, I'll have to look.
I mean, you might not,
Yeah.
you wouldn't always want that. Sometimes you say, well,
Right.
I'm gonna take input from everybody and I will deal.
Right, it is what it is.
Doing what I need to do to my.
Exactly, yeah.
It might be where I still want to represent each.
Yeah,
So,
that could be done. So I certainly see where that could be done because when you're doing two-way binding, I already have it plumbed such that if you make a change in client A, it goes down to the server, it only goes up to client B. It knows which client is which, but that's not revealed to the end code today. So that would be something like an enhancement. Say, well, here's a client update from this client. That wouldn't be too hard to add.
Well, I could even see, even then going back out programmatically, let's say this, something has happened to the data such that I would like these 3 clients to get updated.
Right.
For
It could be done because
permission reason, for
for whatever reason, right? But again, these clients are in the same session, so I want to make sure that's clear. It's the same login that this is happening. So like, he and I would never have this behavior between our 2 clients. I mean, like when I say clients, see multiple, I'm saying multiple tabs on my same machine, my same browser. Because this is have you done a lot of Java Servlet stuff?
a long time ago.
But it is very much the same session concept as Java Servlet. So I open the browser to that page, to the site, and it creates a session in memory, represents it somehow, and begins serving pages. So all of my requests have the context of that session. And I open another tab, particularly in Chrome and most browsers, same session, uses the same cookie. Those are the clients. I don't mean you and I separate machines. We would always be separate clients. You would have to synchronize through your own mechanism.
Right.
So you would certainly know the difference between clients in that context.
But I understand it knows, we know the difference there, but there's a no, it's just that I can have access and say, I would like this to go to this client where this is some function of my client.
Right. Well, you'd have to plumb it out yourself because the only time that a client shares session and potentially shares this behavior we're talking about with the binding, it would only be within the same machine physically because of the way Java Servlets handle sessions.
Well, so you guys have different clients, right?
Yeah, but that's because I have that memory, that in-memory chat server singleton, because he's a singleton, and that's.
You're saying normally that would actually be another instance.
Yeah, this right here would be a database or something, right? I've made this singleton here so that we can't chat to one another, but I have a binder and he has a binder. And so that the ng bind is happening between my client rendering and the session representing my session on the server. And what I've done with that is then take it further, pass it to the singleton that can broadcast it back out to everybody.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. And so there you would have users or something that you could distinguish them and do whatever you want.
But can I get back to the live service level that this,
Oh, can you start finding them and stuff?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I mean. I want to be able to get at and say.
Yeah. And so you can certainly do that. So what you can do is rather than using this magic listener manager and doing this, actually listener manager fine, but the register with and all that, you can actually explicitly say, I want to register and I am this ID or something like the IP address or whatever you've used to identify your users. In which case, in your centralized little synchronization server or whatever functionality is where it goes, oh yeah, I know that guy, I know that guy, her, him.
So you got to handle.
Yeah.
Later use to say.
Right.
Broadcast.
Right. Fun stuff though. This actually works. It's okay because the line numbers.
See why.
It's okay.
Yeah, just really, really was the thing to install. I can see why this was really the thing in those days when it came out and Scala.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. And it's standing the test of time because like Angular started 4 or 5 years ago, if that long ago. And it just like, look, jives with this really well and just turn it into this nice Angular backend by adding this module. So it's standing the test of time when you see stuff like that where things are radically changing on the web front, but still doesn't matter because fundamentally it's sound and makes sense. So that's it. Questions, comments, concerns?
Concerns, I've been learning it first. But, well, in all seriousness, we're not going to go to learn Lyft. Is there a good book?
For Lyft,
The tutorial on the site, is that the best place?
so the site has a lot of the resources found together, and Simply Lyft is like an online tutorial thing that was written quite a while ago. Where is, okay, of course there's API docs. Somewhere. It's under community maybe? Lyft cookbook. You can also, it's just like a book that's actually in print here. They threw a lobster on it, you know, the classic, this is O'Reilly, yeah, you know, if you publish for O'Reilly, they go pick an animal for you. There you go. You are lobster. You know, JavaScript was Rhino, and hence Mozilla Rhino and all that. And then Nashorn, the JavaScript engine, Nashorn is just German for Rhino. So,
Oh, is it?
yeah,
I didn't know.
yeah. That's why they named it that. Nashorn is because it's Rhino. But there's the Lyft cookbook. The community is awesome. That's kind of it's kept up to date.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
One of the Lyft committers is working on it. So the print version there, obviously and there's also Lyft in Action, but I think it's a little dated
Yeah,
now.
Lyft in Action is something like 2009.
Yeah, I think it's been updated a time or two, but I think it's like circa Lyft 2.4, and we're about to release 2.6.
Right.
Not huge differences, but there's some pretty good stuff in between those two that's worth keeping up with. But the cool thing is, like, I think if you use LiftNG, you really only need to know a couple of fundamental things, like, you know, like I was talking about with session, you know, discussion I have, you know, just now about what the notion of a session is in Lyft and a few things like that. But and what I'm saying, there's a lot that Lyft does. If you use Angular, it probably doesn't make any sense. It's not usually like Lyft screens. Like, I don't need a screen. I'm using Angular and things like that. So, really, another way to look at it too is, and then there's a whole bit of like how to use their ORMs that are built in. I don't even use them. They're good, but you don't have to. It's one of my favorite things about Lyft is that it's not very opinionated. You know, people like opinionated frameworks because it gets you started fast, but you say you want to get off the rails, pun, you're kind of screwed. You know, yeah. Yeah, like there's like a cat sitting on a couch somewhere watching it, and that's about it. Maybe someone go back and watch it. I don't know. But yeah. So it's just difficult to get off and do your own thing if you need to with a lot of frameworks. But Lyft is very much like, oh, you want to do that, whatever, you know, like we just served your HTML and Sling JavaScript for you. You know, everything else you get to do. It barely feels, to me, it barely feels like a framework. It almost feels more like a library. And the only part where I feel like it's a framework is because there's just like, there's the magic packages. You got a few things like that makes it feel like a framework rather than a library. But it's not as heavy as some other web frameworks I've worked with in the past. So yeah, you know, there's a bit of learning curve to Lyft, and main thing is if you go to the community here, and there's a forum right there. The forum, oh, it's cool. It's actually embedded. There's a Lyft group. Yeah, you ask anything, somebody's gonna hop on there and answer it, whether it be whether it be a committer or just another user. The community is really, really helpful. And apparently I need to catch up. There's about 15 I've not read. Oh, wow. Yeah. So anyway, LiftNG, y'all. Yeah. It took, what, about an hour and a half? So that's a good. Yeah, that's what I said. I was, you know. So a little bit of background on why I called it that at all is, how do I make this thing stop now? It says it's still live. Did I put in? Oh, it's another browser window. That's the problem. So stop. hang up.